everybody? Hope everybody's doing good today. Today I'd like to show you how I do a muffler mod. When I'm done with it, it still looks pretty factory, except for the actual mod itself. When I'm talking about the muffler, and I'm talking about getting inside and getting rid of the baffle. I know some people take saws and just hack them, and to me, in my own opinion, it looks crappy that way. So this is what I do, and it still looks nice and clean when I'm done. So basically, I take the muffler and I grind the seam out. And you can tell when you're getting ready to break through, because if you see right there, there's a line that starts to show up. When that line starts to show up, you know you're broke through or getting ready to break through. You don't need to grind that whole thing completely off. When I'm done, you'll still have a lip there. And if you really wanted to, you could, clamp it back together and tack it back together if you wanted to. I usually don't. They seal up pretty nicely. And it doesn't take long at all. See, that little bit there didn't take long at all. And I just keep going until I see that line show up. And all I'm using is an angle grinder with a flap wheel. I think it's 60 grit. And it's worn out, and I'm still cutting through it pretty quick. There's not much work to this. I think it's more of a pain than if you took a die grinder or a saw and cut that in half. For the most part, they're all straight angles. That was the hardest little part right there. All right. Now you just take a screwdriver, you go along that flange, and it peels right up just like that. Look at that. It's coming right off very easily. Now it's apart, just that quick and easy. So that totally took me probably a total of maybe 3 minutes. It took me a little longer because I'm, talking back and forth with you guys and trying to get good frame footage, but maybe a total of 3 minutes. And it's going to look nice and clean when I'm done. It's not going to look like a hack job. I'm not saying that what other people do is a hack job. If that's what they're satisfied with, then that's what they're satisfied with. And if that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. I'm not trying to say one way is better than the other, or it should be done a certain way, because I'm not. This is how I do it, and this will be most likely how I will always do it. So I want to leave these pieces in, so when I go to tighten it up, I don't crush the can or flex the can or anything like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this in such a way that I can put these tubes back. Looks like I might be able to just break the weld. I'll just clean that off a little bit. It could be a little easier and quicker just to take and cut that weld a little bit. This is a Metabo grinder. This grinder is designed for the cutting wheel. This grinder does not have the RPMs that this grinder has, so do not put one of these cutting blades on one of these grinders. I've done that in the past, and because of the higher RPMs in this style grinder, this wheel, it'll sit there and wave at you like this the whole time it's spinning. Now when that starts to wear down some, it stops doing that. But it is not designed for the higher RPMs that these angle grinders run. These are designed for slower RPMs, just for these cutting wheels. And you can grind with them, you can cut with them, you can sand with them. And they're a little expensive. There we go. So without even, if I was doing this without doing any filming, I might have 4 minutes tied up in it. And just simple hand grinder. And this one's a specialty grinder, but you could have found a way to cut that off of there. This baffle's still here. That's what that baffle looked like. So it was trying to breathe through all these little holes here. It was dead end on one side and the exhaust blew through on the other side. and then it had to exit out of these two little tiny holes right here. Look how small that is. This is my screwdriver. It's a tiny screwdriver. That's all it has to breathe out of. That's crazy. With that exhaust being held up inside of this large can muffler and this baffling, and the heat can't get out of the cylinder and the exhaust like it should be able to. So heat gets held behind. Your saw will run cooler once you get it opened up. All right, now we'll just do a little bit of cleanup. Now this can should go back together pretty easily, and look how nicely that seals back up. You can't even really tell that anything was really done. It seals up so nicely. Like I said, if you really wanted to, you could put a couple tacks in a couple spots just to kind of keep it together. This is no different than steel with their muffler, that they the can comes apart like this, and you got the two screws inside of here, so you have to take the front part of the can off to get to the two screws in here. It is no different than that. So if I just wanted to do a muffler mod and still use my deflector, all right here, right where this square spot is, I could cut all that out, or just drill a large hole in there that fills up most of the area, and then put my deflector back over that. That would help out some. Modify the deflector a little bit. All right, let's carry you back inside. So I just need to figure out how I want to do it. He said for most of the time that this saw is going to be running is when he's trying to clear the trail to get back to a stand. So I might just open this up here and then modify the deflector so more can get out. But once you put that onto here, it has that little bit of a hole to get out of, right? So if I were to take this and cut it back to that seam right there, that would open it up quite a bit more and allow for a larger hole there. And that might be all he needs, because he's not going to run this saw on a daily basis. And he's going to fire it up maybe once or twice a year. and clear stuff with it. So I'm not gonna, I was thinking about doing something a little more elaborate, but by piping it right here, well, I'm not going to do that. If it was a firewood saw form or daily work saw, maybe I would. I'm just going to take my unibit and just cut through that with my unibit. And I can put a screen back in and it'll be good to go. All right, so let's work on getting that cut open. Set that up in the vise. Get you guys moved around here a little bit. Just cleaning up the backside a little bit. Let's see what we can do here. All right. Make sure you get all those shavings out of there. And all I'm going to do is take my Dremel and go in there and clean that up a little bit. That should be plenty. There is a percentage. There's a calculation that you could do. It's like 80% of the exhaust port on the saw, on the motor. I believe it is. Yeah, 80%. Keep it in that area. This appears to be right around 9/16 I just did. So I would say that's that hole there. That square is roughly the same size as that port there. Yep, it's pretty close. So I would say I probably took up, I don't know, 70 or 80% of that. Change out my bit. I've had this little Fordham wannabe that I got from Harbor Freight. I've had it for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, maybe a year. I don't think so though, but and I like it. I don't use it every day, but it works fine for me. It works for the for what I do with it. Fordhams are pretty expensive, and if I could afford a Fordham, I would get a Fordham. But it's nothing that I can afford to do right now. I can't justify getting one because I don't use one enough to get one. If I ported cylinders every day or something like that, or at least 3 or 4 times a week or something, then yeah, I could justify getting one. The nice thing about the Fordham is it has a reverse. So when you're grinding a cylinder, when you're on one side of the cylinder, the bit's turning the proper way. When you get to the other side of the cylinder, now it's starting to dig in such a way it could peel your plating off. So it's kind of nice you'd be able to reverse it to help prevent that. If you're very careful and light-handed, then you can do this easily without the reverse. I gotta scoot you guys back a little bit because my foot pedal's right there at the bottom. And all I'm gonna do is just clean it up. Again, you want to make sure that you're getting all that debris out of there. So basically now this saw will have that hole plus these 2 smaller ones to breathe out of. And that should be a substantial help. So I basically, on this piece here, I want to take and elevate that up to about this spot right there. Right where it starts to come flat again. Get rid of that little spot there. And that's this spot here will line right up with the that spot there will line right up with the port on the saw. All right, I'll bring you back in a minute when I get done modifying this piece here. I went along and modified this piece here so that it opens up, because the hole was about that big and now it's this big, so that's quite a bit. So I can put my screen back in here. I can set my deflector back on and tighten everything back up and we'd be good to go. And that's just a mild muffler mod. And you could get it more elaborate. Like I said, we could take my unit bit, bore a hole there, put a pipe in, kind of weld it up or silver solder it. And so we are ready to put this back together. Can be a little tricky sometimes putting this stuff back together. But this one here, it already has the studs here in place on the cylinder, so we can just install these pieces here without it, without having to try to fumble to get that back together. Come on. Set your screen back into place. And just stand everything right up. Set your deflector back on. Grab your hardware. So in most cases, with a saw that has a muffler mod, it should be able to breathe better. It should be able to dissipate the heat better. And you should have some better throttle response. Just make sure your halves are lined up. And for the most part, it self-aligned itself as the fasteners start to tighten up. Everything nice and tight. And there we go. Still looks factory. So if I were just working on this only, not trying to do a video or anything like that, I'd have a half an hour tied up into that. The hardest ones to work on are the ones that come in steels today. And probably for the past 10 years maybe. They welded the guts on the inside. It's a real pain trying to get something in there to cut the baffle out because it's been welded into place. I've also ran across mufflers now where the two halves have been silver brazed together. So now you can't even get them apart. So now you're forced to take something and cut the housing all the way around instead of grinding it like I did. So, but maybe the aftermarket mufflers, maybe they don't do that. If you could find an aftermarket muffler that for your saw, maybe it won't be brazed together like that. This is one of those mufflers I was telling you about. This is an aftermarket muffler for 066 or 660, and it's a dual port. So you got back in here is an opening, and right here on the side is another opening, and they both have screens on them. And but this is one of the mufflers that I was telling you about, to where you have to go inside to unbolt it from the cylinder. So there's not much difference in doing this. And this is actually the first one I've ever seen that actually had a gasket. Most of them don't even have gaskets in them. Most of them are just like this, right? So there's not a whole lot of difference between this, because you would have to go back there and get that bolt out back there and that bolt out back there. And even though this is aftermarket, yes, they welded this baffle into place. But typically, if you can get something in there to cut this front section out, or even if you just take and drill large holes right through the front of this baffle, that would help out a lot. And then it's a dual port. That might be a 1/2 inch hole back in there, maybe. And then you have this one here. You could actually open that up some more, come this way with it, or come to up or down with it. But even the aftermarket is kind of duplicating what the steel manufacturer is doing. So if steel welds it inside, looks like the aftermarket is welding it inside also. But that's a real pain to try to get out of there. But there's not much difference between this and what I did today. Alright guys, that is my video on how to remove the guts out of a muffler and to do a mild muffler mod. So hopefully you like the content. If so, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, send me some comments, be kind, and help people when you can.